And oh yeah, trigger warning, I'm going to talk about sex in this episode. Hello, beautiful soul family, and welcome to the Walk On Podcast, the podcast where I try to demystify spirituality, personal growth and healing, and whatever else I feel like talking about. I'm your host, Britt Cannon, and this month's topic is the pain of expansion. I could also call it the pleasure of expansion, and you'll see why as the episode progresses. I've been thinking a lot about this because I was helping a friend through some imposter syndrome, the kind of imposter syndrome that only comes from expansion, right? From getting a thing, an opportunity, accomplishing something before you feel ready. And also just the triggering of good things happening. I feel like we talk a lot about how bad things trigger us, but we don't talk that much about what to do when good things trigger us. When we experience all those feelings of why me? Why would I be chosen for this? What makes me deserve this over other people? Or can I even handle this? You know, maybe I tricked everyone into choosing me or picking me. Or that feeling right before you expand of feeling kind of dissatisfied or frustrated with where you are. There's a lot of kind of negative feelings, what we think of as negative feelings, that come along or come up when we're going through or about to go through an expansion. And I say what we think of as negative feelings because I actually believe that no feelings are negative. I got a comment on a TikTok I made about shame recently that was very frustrating. Someone super condescending, just basically telling me off for saying that shame is a useless emotion. And, it's hard in a 1-minute clip to cover all the nuances of a topic or a take, which is part of what makes that kind of social media a little dangerous in many ways, and also it's just frustrating how people aren't willing to engage with the longer, fuller, more in-depth discussion because they don't have the attention span or the willingness to click on a link or the curiosity or whatever. They just want to feel the outrage, be a little mean, and then move on with their life. But while I do believe that there's no such thing really as a negative emotion. We're all supposed to feel all of our feelings whenever they come up. And to call something good or bad is ultimately only a path to repression. It's when you feel jealousy and then you feel shame around feeling jealousy. And so you want to create distance because the pain is so uncomfortable that you want to create distance between yourself and the feeling because there's all this shame in between. And all that does is make the jealousy persist subconsciously. Whereas if you own it, if you just let yourself feel it, and you don't assign any blame for who's causing you to feel it or take it out on anyone else, if you just ride it like a wave, which I say pretty much every episode about certain emotions, all emotions, just ride it like a wave without judgment, it kind of comes and goes much more quickly, and there isn't so much internal turmoil at the feeling itself. So I feel shame isn't exactly emotion. It's more a thought around emotions, and it is a barrier to feeling your emotions, which is what helps build resilience. It's if you understand that, one, bad things are going to happen in life, just like good things are going to happen. Two, you can trust yourself to, I trust myself to go through hard things and come out the other side a better, stronger, softer, more resilient, more vulnerable, more fully realized person, because like that's how I handle things. I know that I know how to heal. I trust that I know how to heal because I've been doing it for a long time. And that to me is resilience. And I guess resilience factors into the pain of expansion too, because I feel like, I mean, uh, everyone feels bad about failure, or everyone fears failure. And that's totally understandable. I do too. But you fear it less and less the more you go through it and kind of bounce back, that's like the resilience thing. And I feel like what keeps you from kind of getting on the ride of expansion and like enjoying it, enjoying the unfolding, enjoying the process, enjoying, all the pleasure that comes with expansion. The fear of failure can prevent you from even trying in the first place. The fear that like, if I expand, and I get used to it, or like I trust it and then it's all ripped away from me, that will destroy me. And that then we like cycle back to the resilience, which is the trust that if it's happening to me, it's supposed to be, like if I'm accomplishing this thing, it means I'm ready, even if I don't feel ready, or that like maybe something about the process of experiencing this thing, of letting myself expand, will help me become ready, right? And I feel like that imposter syndrome and that fear of failure is also a barrier, like shame. It's like we have so much baggage around like confidence or faith in oneself, or even just like graciously accepting something. It's like if someone compliments you and then you say thank you, depending on the person doing the complimenting, sometimes they'll be just like, like Regina George, like, so you agree, you are really pretty. And yeah, so I was thinking about it, and we had a really sweet conversation, several really sweet conversations about it. And it's so beautiful how like you need the mirror of others to like heal or understand certain things. And like through kind of supporting and encouraging and just like being really proud of my friend through this growth she's experiencing, it holds up a mirror to myself and reminds me, I've been struggling a little bit the past couple months, I guess. I just hit these walls every once in a while where like the reality of material pressures, of material needs, of, there's like this thing where it's like I want to keep doing everything that I'm doing because I am making progress in my career, like making these things happen. But it's not fast enough to allow me to not need another job. And so I'm always walking this tightrope of like, how do I work just enough to cover my needs and still have enough time for like my friends, my partner, my family, my interests, rest, taking care of myself? How do I negotiate that? How do I figure that out? How do I find the right balance? And there are times where like the material needs start to kind of pile up and freak me out. Like if one of my million jobs I'm juggling falls away, or like what happened a couple weeks ago, all of them kind of fall off the map. It's like starts to be like, oh God, now I have to find something. It's so hard to find something with like just the right amount of hours and just the right demand. And then I start feeling like resistance and frustration, and I start feeling resentful of like the fact that it hasn't unfolded fast enough. And then it starts bothering me that like more of my friends and family don't listen to this show or like read my work or listen to my music. And I start getting really resentful of that, because then I'm just like, look at all the people I know who have these massive support systems where everyone's so proud of them and so excited for everything they do. And still, even though my life is good, I feel like I still am going through that, where like it's really hard for me to convince people to believe in me for whatever reason. And then you start to think like, maybe I'm not good, because like, shouldn't your loved ones support you just like point blank, period? And if they don't, maybe they're like subconsciously trying to tell you something without having to tell you like, yo, you kind of suck at this. And, so I've just been going through all these feelings. And then I was like seeing my friend sort of not able to like hold the gravity of the really good thing that's happening for her. And it made me remember that like that imposter syndrome can follow you all the way to like a Pulitzer Prize. You know what I mean? Like that imposter syndrome can follow you to winning a bunch of Grammys. And that bottomless pit of like of that we need for like validation, or that thing of like, when I get this, I will feel secure. When I've done this, I will know I've made it. And from reading a lot of biographies of like celebrities or people I admire in their fields or whatever, whose work I admire and resonate with me, it's like everyone feels that all the time, no matter what step they're at. It's not an external validation thing. It's like an internal validation, surrender. It's like a self-love thing. It's letting yourself celebrate your wins. It's being able to take a bird's eye view once in a while. I talked about this in my astrology report for June, so if you haven't listened to that, go check that out. Every once in a while you kind of have to take a step back and be like, okay, like, have I actually grown? What have I achieved? I'll do this once in a while where I'll just like write a little list of all the things I've achieved, whether it's like, in the last couple of months I had this stupid, useless, like, I filmed it in without even thinking about it, like video, and it's gone like mildly viral on TikTok. And so I've gotten like 200 followers in the last couple weeks, and like that's a big deal. It's I was on there for like a year and a half and I had 99 followers, and all of a sudden I have like almost 300, and that's a big deal, but there's part of me that always wants to be like, but it's nothing. It means nothing. It's not enough. It's not enough. And I feel like I understand like the significance of gratitude so much. And it was actually sometimes easier for me to like tap into gratitude, like a small, like the simple gratitude, when I was struggling more, when I had less, when I was less secure, when I was less stable. And that seems bizarre. Like, why is that the case? And I feel like it's because you don't have any choice in those really deep struggle moments, but to be like, all right, I'm grateful I have like a mattress to sleep on tonight. I'm grateful I like took a shower a couple days ago. I'm grateful I ate one meal today, and like that's all I could afford, but I'm so grateful for it. And when you have more, it's like you take the simple things for granted, and then it becomes much harder to tap into gratitude. And so it's a good reminder that like sometimes it would serve to kind of plant our feet in the ground and take stock in a way that is like removed from imposter syndrome, or removed from the stress of like of the fear of not accomplishing what you want to accomplish. And I see this happen, like the anxiety in like my clients I read tarot for. There's so many of them who are in like situationships, or complicated relationships, or have someone who's going back and forth on them or whatever, and the anxiety of just wanting to be like, are they thinking of me? Are they thinking of me? Are they thinking of me? Like, are they going to be with me soon? Are they going to open up to me? And it's just like, I always try to steer them away from that way of thinking and being like, how are you doing? Like, what do you need? Are you thinking of you? Are you considering you? Are you loving you? Because regardless of what they're doing, if you're not doing that, like, you're never going to be satisfied, right? Because of the external, like there's a lot that external validation and like community and belonging and like being seen and loved and all that is so crucial, so important. And there's so much you can't heal alone, but there's also a lot that the external isn't gonna fix for you. And I think this is part of it, is understanding expansion, not being afraid of it, learning how to embrace it, learning how to understand when you're going through it, what it looks like, what it feels like. And as much as there is pain and fear and, anxiety, there's also joy and pleasure and like liberation. So yeah, let's get into it. So when I was thinking about doing this episode, there was like a few things that kind of came to me, like a few metaphors, a few like just sort of, sometimes the universe communicates to me through like images. Sometimes it's like sounds or songs. Sometimes I'll hear like whispers of like messages, especially in my dreams. And I'll also get communication through like symbols in my dreams. And one of the symbols I had for the idea of expansion is like, have you ever seen one of those videos of someone being like, think about this if a guy tries to tell you that he's like too big to wear a condom? And oh yeah, trigger warning, I'm going to talk about sex in this episode. Also, happy Pride. I can't believe I forgot in my astrology report for June. I totally forgot to even mention Pride. It was a very stressful time trying to get that video out, and I was just like rushing and didn't even realize that like June is Pride month. And yeah, I just like wasn't able to process time because I was so stressed about getting it out. So happy Pride. This episode is going to be a little explicit. So buckle up, buttercups. So anyway, those videos where someone like stretches a condom like over their head, that's sort of what it feels like sometimes to expand. Like you or your energy is the condom and like the universe I don't know, you're going over the situation's head. I also had this image come to me a few weeks ago when I was really, really busy, and I was like, God, I don't think I can keep up. And I was talking about this in one of my past episodes. Like I kept seeing the Chariot card, which is like someone in a carriage and a bunch of horses are pulling it. And you can tell they're kind of going fast. One thing about the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is that Pamela Coleman Smith, like the way she drew these images, some of them have such movement, and I just think she put a lot of thought and like intention into them, and clearly she's a very talented artist, and it's a shame that she didn't get her props for so long because of white men and racism and greed and people being assholes. But anyway, you can tell they're going really fast. And like for a second, I had this feeling that like I was on the chariot and all these horses were pulling me really fast, and I felt out of control, and it felt scary, and it felt like I can't handle this, which I feel like that's the voice of the imposter syndrome coming in, right? Like I can't handle this good thing happening. I can't receive it because I can't handle this. This has happened to me in like relationships before, when you've been through a lot of bad situations and people who couldn't love you and like people who couldn't listen to boundaries, people who didn't take care of you. And then the first time you have someone who like wants to give to you, wants to take care of you, wants to support you, wants to really love you, and who really sees you, there is sometimes this triggering feeling of like, I can't handle this. I can't receive this. This feels so uncomfortable to me. And you realize like, holy shit, I've been giving as a defense mechanism and no one's ever given to me before. And like, what does that mean about all my past relationships if this is like a foreign feeling? You know what I mean? And so you have to go through all those feelings and like work through it and sort of be with yourself as you expand to like let this big new thing that is so good that you've always wanted in, and to like trust that if it's happening, you're ready for it. And like, if you were to trust it and it were to still go south, you still have everything you need to like carry yourself through that experience without it totally destroying you. And then we reach resilience again, right? And also, like, once you expand to fit something like that, it's like next time it's easier. Next time it's not so scary. If you're working that resilience muscle, if you're metaphorically like doing your stretches every day. This reminds me of I've been doing burlesque again for the last couple months, and there's been a few old routines that I've been like trying to get back in to rotation, and some of them have choreography that like is really challenging that back in the day was super easy, although I wasn't super intentional with my body at the time. Like I was really bad about stretching, and I would just like throw myself into a split having not warmed up my body or my muscles at all. And because of that, and because of sitting in lotus position meditating for hours a day, which was not good for my hips, I recently found out through like research for exercise that you're not supposed to hold a stretch beyond like a certain amount of time. It's like once you feel the benefits of the stretch, you're kind of supposed to let it go, because if you hold it too long, especially if you have hypermobility, which I do, you can actually cause damage to your body. And I feel like I really badly injured my hip during that time in my life. And then I just sort of like stopped doing strenuous exercise because I found it triggering, because I couldn't figure out how to have like a healthy relationship with it. I didn't trust myself to be able to expand enough to let that in without it becoming disordered. And I just was scared that it wouldn't be joyful. And also I had no like means to get the things I needed to do the kind of exercise that I like that feels good to me, you know, like space to dance, weights for lifting, or like a gym membership or something. And so lately I've been practicing my choreography, and like I stretch every day, I lift weights, I do like these intense high intensity interval training cardio videos, and my I'm able like closer and closer and closer every time I rehearse to getting into a full split. And there was part of me that was scared of trying, or like there was part of me that the first time I did it and I couldn't get all the way down to the floor, that I was like, oh no, have I lost it forever? And wouldn't you know, with like time and patience and just like being there with myself through the process and finding a way to enjoy the process, and also approaching it with curiosity of just being like, I wonder if I keep doing this, if I'll be able to this. And if you haven't listened to my episode on curiosity, which was 2 months ago's topic, go check that out, because I think it was a really good episode and I was super proud of it. So, curiosity, I haven't stopped thinking about it since I wrote and made that episode, because it is everything with healing, with life, with love. It is everything. Curiosity is like the magic key to everything. If you're able to be curious, you're doing great. The other metaphor I was thinking about was giving birth, which is like almost a cliche at this point, but it is what I always feel when I'm like on the verge of creating something new, or like I've talked about this on the podcast a bunch, but like there's always that feeling when you first start trying to create something where it feels so big that you're like, there's no way I can do this. Who do I think I am for like challenging myself in this way? Like, I'm not talented enough. I don't have the skills. I don't know what I'm doing. You know, imposter syndrome, bing, 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 coming in to try to piss on everybody's good time. And I have learned through creating over and over and over again, working on my flexibility, working on my surrender, working on my resilience, working on trusting the process. I've also practiced creating and going through to the point of mastery so many times, right? Like I have the idea, I have all the scared feelings about it, then I just one thing at a time it until I achieve the goal. And then next time I'm a little less scared. I'm a little less caught up in the, I can't do this, the doubt. And then I'm able to get back to work more quickly, and then it happens more seamlessly. But, you know, it comes in waves. It's not linear, nothing is linear. So it's like, you know, every time you hit like a roadblock or I really needed this episode. You know, sometimes I just be talking to myself like, yes, I needed to hear that, me. uh because I've been struggling and I really needed to hear this. But you'll hit a roadblock and then you'll have to feel the feelings again, and then you'll carry on, and then you'll hit another roadblock and you'll feel the feelings again. But it's like, I use this metaphor all the time too, like sweeping it with a dustpan. Like you sweep once, but you don't get everything in there. Then you have to scoot the dustpan back and then sweep a little more and then scoot it back until all the crumbs are up. And by the time all the crumbs are up, it's like, the thing is done. You have birthed the baby. And I feel like, you know, it's a cliche. I mean, I haven't given birth. I haven't ever been pregnant. So like, I'm talking out of my ass here, but I feel like it's a metaphor for a reason. And, you know, in shows, we always see the cliche, or movies, where like, as the person's going into labor, they have a little freak out of like, I can't do this. I can't be a mom. I'm totally fucking terrified. And like, I know this is going to hurt like a motherfucker. I know I'm not going to have fun for the next, like, who even knows how long it takes? Like, few to like days sometimes, these poor people pushing a human being out of their puswacha. It's just like, ugh, hard, you know. And then, but then when it's like over and you have this person that you like love so intensely, you know, some people say it was worth it, some people say it wasn't. I think all interpretations are valid. But, you know, because I haven't done that, I'm like, is that really the metaphor that I want to use? Although I do often think of that in my head, or like that's how the universe communicates to me. So when I feel like I'm like Sisyphus and I've, you know, got that boulder like almost to the top of the hill, but I can't see the top of the hill because there's a big fucking boulder in my way that I'm using all of my strength to like push up. And I can't see around it because it's too big, and I can't like hold it in place for a second to go around it to look, you know. So like, you don't know that the end is near, that you're almost there. Just like with a baby, like you're not sure if this push is the last one, or if this push or the next push is going to be the last one, or how long you're going to have to do this. And it gets a little daunting and a little exhausting. And sometimes I'll hear in my head the universe be like, just one more push, just one more big push, right? Which is like the language we hear, how they display like Lamaze coaching or whatever, what it is like to give birth in media. And yeah, so I think it works, but it's like maybe not exactly right for me and my experience. And then when I was talking to my friend about it, it clicked in my head. Like I said, it's just like fisting. This is the pain of expansion. It's just like fisting. You know, like when it first starts happening, it's like your body is ready for it. You know, like your body asks for it. I remember the first time I was with my ex-girlfriend, not the first time we were together, but like that was my first time being with a woman. And I remember like fucking her once and feeling her like trying to take my hand in, and I remember stopping and being like, I feel like your pussy like wants my fist. And she was like, I feel like it does too. We never went there with each other because I don't know, it felt like a big deal. Like we were both bisexuals who, she had only been with another woman once in a threesome, and I had never been with another woman. So like we were so new to the game that we didn't know what was what yet. Like that was just like a thing that happens, that it's normal, that it's not shameful, that it's not going to ruin you. I mean, I knew that, but you still have all this like baggage you have to unpack about it. But I was sort of fascinated and like titillated and inspired by how the body lets you know if that's what it wants, you know? And then once it started happening to me, I was like, oh, I feel it. It's like it's expanding. You know, I had this image come into my head a little while ago when I was experiencing that like chariot card energy of feeling like I'm trying to control these horses that are going full speed in this like rickety chariot, and I'm not sure I have what it takes, or like I can figure out how to channel this in the right direction. And then I got this image in my head of like, you know, I have a bubble that like is my energy. And right now, all I'm doing is like expanding it around whatever I'm trying to call in, like just parts of it, pieces of it, sections of it, just like, oh, we're adding this now, let's expand to fit it in. Oh, we're adding this now, let's just expand to fit it in. It sort of reminds me of singing. When you're using proper technique for vocalizing, depending on your personality and your voice type, I struggled with force, with muscle, with tension, with trying to like control the sound and get it to do what I wanted it to do. But the thing is, when you have, in general, any singer is going to struggle with riding sharp on pitches, like pitchy is not a thing. Sorry about it, American Idol. But there's like in tune, and then there's sharp, which is a little too high, and then there's flat, which is a little too low. Flat usually means you're not supporting enough. Sharp usually means you're pushing with muscles and tension instead of releasing. And I remember my teachers, I've had a few over the years, telling me like it's about release, it's about expansion, it's about taking that big, delicious, supportive, like full body breath that you can feel in your front, across your back, your diaphragm extends and you're like full of air. And then it's just about like releasing the sound, vibrating the vocal folds and like letting them do what they do. They know how to do it. This also reminds me of, I think I talked about this in my last episode. I was watching the show Dying for Sex, which is so good. Highly recommend, although it's very, very sad. And dealing with death and cancer and stuff like that, which is hard to handle. But there is a hospice nurse who has this conversation where she explains what happens when you die and how dying is just a bodily process, that like your body already knows how to do it. And isn't there something comforting about that? Just being like, right, it's nothing I have to worry about or like, even dread. It's just like another thing our body does, just like taking a good shit in the morning if you're lucky, or like crying when you're sad, or coming, like there's all this pressure and like stigma and fear and like anxiety and Christian patriarchal nonsense over everything we do, especially like our natural processes. I feel like the colonial mindset and the way it limits us is like there's no it's infinite, the ways that it limits us and the ways that it sort of like creeps in and distances you from yourself. So anyway, expansion is just like fisting. So how do you get fisted? First of all, I want to talk about a little like history of my relationship with fisting, which is, for a long time I was unaware of it. And the first time I ever heard of it was in the movie Chasing Amy, which is like one of my like favorite movies, but it's also extremely problematic and like always makes me feel really weird when I watch it. Like, I don't think it's necessarily good or like correct. It's very flawed and problematic, but it was the first time I saw a character, Alyssa, who's like the main character. She starts off as someone who's with women, and then she falls in love with a man, and then they end up breaking up. And I think she goes back to women. I can't remember right now because it's been many years since I've seen it. But it's presented in this way that's like, oh, she was a lesbian, now she's not a lesbian. You're such a good fucking hot dude, Ben Affleck, that like, of course she's straight now. And just all of the like nuance of her character. And I can never decide if Kevin Smith thinks of Alyssa as the villain or like the hero, or if Ben Affleck is supposed to be like the main character and the sympathetic character, or maybe it's everyone and it's really nuanced, except for the best friend, Ben Affleck's best friend, who's just like super lesbophobic and like a nightmare man, terrible, awful person, kind of ruins the movie. But it is true to life too. Like there are many dudes like that. Anyway, just like the the queerness of it, and she talks about fisting in one scene, and Ben Affleck is like horrified, and also you can tell there's some thoughts there about like, is this gonna, like, that doesn't ruin you, the way people think that like if you have sex with a lot of penises, like it ruins your vagina and you're not gonna be tight anymore or whatever. It's like, ugh, grow up, like read a book. Am I even going to be able to post this on YouTube? I'm going to have to do so much bleeping in the editing, but whatever, it's Pride Month. Fuck you. Queer as in fuck you. If I want to talk about fisting, I'm going to talk about fisting. And he's like, doesn't that hurt? And she's like, yeah, for a second, but then it feels really, really good. And my like 16-year-old mind was like, wait, what? And then I heard it again with a friend in college who was like had her sexual debut later than the rest of us. And then she like went on a study abroad trip. She like had a bunch of sex with a bunch of people, and then she came home and like fell in love. And one of our mutual friends told me that like that couple was really, really into fisting. And I was like, the hetero mentality is something else. Because I was like, why would you do that when there's like a penis? But it's like, penises have a lot of limitations. And even if you're having sex with, a cis man with like a nice dick, there's still limitations to it. You know what I mean? And like, even if you're doing that, there's still plenty of other stuff you could be doing. It's like, why do we limit ourselves? Why do we only color with like a couple crayons in the box when there's like an infinite amount of colors available to us? And like, I think we're conditioned to like lie about the amount of pleasure certain things bring us, or like we're taught to be ashamed if we need more attention, or like a lot of times if you're having sex with cis straight men who aren't like evolved or like haven't really tapped into their pleasure, they're just playing out some porn fantasy, they don't care. They don't care whether you get off or not. Anyway, I remember talking to her about it and her being like, no, you don't get it. Like, it's so good. We have to change the sheets afterwards. And I was just like math memeing, like I was like, huh. But it still took me many years to try it myself. So some like hot tips for it. Lot of like preparation, a lot of foreplay. I usually have to have like a few orgasms before my body is like, give me that fist. And then go slow, it does like feel uncomfortable. I wouldn't even call it pain. It's more just like discomfort for a second. And there's always this feeling where I'm like, oh, maybe it's not gonna happen. And before I can get like happen today out, I receive it and we're off to the races. And yeah, just like relax, enjoy the ride, surrender to the process. And if it takes you a few tries to get there, like that's totally fine, which is all relevant advice to this episode in general. I'm going to take it back to like we talked about the fisting, my relationship to it, how it works, gave you a little advice about it. And now I'd like to take it back as a metaphor and talk about like expansion, which is the real spiritual topic of the episode. So how to tell if you're about to go through an expansion or if you're like on the precipice of an expansion. There's a lot of discomfort and frustration. The start of expansion doesn't feel like, hell yeah, I'm about to expand. It feels like frustration with where you're at. It feels like dissatisfaction. It feels like the contrast of the moment is starting to get to you, and it's very important, this first step of discomfort and frustration. It's very, very important because those feelings both tell you a lot. If you're feeling discomfort because like your life is too small for you, that you feel limited in some way, that you feel like you would like to grow. Like discomfort is sometimes telling you like it's time to grow and maybe you don't feel ready, or you'd like to grow but you don't have what you need yet. And then the frustration of like, why is it not happening? Why am I not there? Or frustration at yourself for being like, why am I dissatisfied? I think all the time about this very smart, very sweet friend I have who, when I was leaving my last long-term relationship, which was with a cis man, and was very limiting in a lot of ways. And like, it was just, I was feeling the discomfort and frustration of being limited by someone else and by a relationship that like wasn't able to grow with me. And I remember talking to her about it and being like, I just feel so bad because like I should be happy. You know, like people tell me all the time how lucky I am to be with someone who loves me like this, and like, and we do get along really well, like we're good friends, but there's just a lot missing. And also like there's a lot I want to do in my life that like he's not willing to do, and it doesn't feel fair for me to just be like, okay, then I won't do it. You know what I mean? And she was like, you know, the hardest breakup I ever had was when I had to break up with someone just because I wasn't happy, because it felt so selfish. It's much easier, not easier exactly, but you know, like it doesn't feel as, you don't feel as much guilt when like it's a bad relationship or like it's run its course, or the other person does something wrong to like end it or make it easy on you. You know, I always say all the time, I'm so grateful for like toxic relationships in a way, because or toxic people and the way they behave, even though it hurts and it's terrible and it traumatizes you, it's also like in the end, you're like, thank you so much for being such a fucking asshole because now I don't feel any type of way about kicking you to the curb. You know, when you're ready, when you're like over it, it is kind of easy, even though it's like hard up until that moment when something clicks and you're like, I'm out, you know, I'm out of here. But when it's just for your own happiness and you've been used to being like a people pleaser, like keeping the peace, or you've never prioritized your own happiness before, there's a lot of shame that comes up. There's a lot of guilt that comes up. There's a lot of fear that comes up. There's a lot of like, what if I'm wrong? What if I take this chance and then I fail? And everyone's like, see, we knew you were an idiot, or like, you know, there's no take backsies. Like if you end something, it's over. And then you have to think about like, what does it mean to have this person who's been like the center of my life not be in it at all? And there's just like all this stuff, which brings me to the next point, which is that you might feel grief over the old version of you that you're like growing out of. That is a death, and all deaths, even the good ones, come with grief. So a sign that you might be about to go through an expansion is that you might be feeling grief over the old version of yourself. You know, you might be seeing the ways that you're shedding a version of yourself, a belief system, a way of being. And there is this thing of like, you know, the cliche of Pandora's box or red pill vibes, you know, where it's like, some doors, once they're opened, cannot be closed again. And what do they call it in trans spaces? It's like the bubble pop moment, you know, where, and some things are like a pop or like a strike of lightning, like a realization, and some things are like a gradual kind of unfolding or like release or discovery. But regardless, there's going to be grief. There's going to be grief about the you were to certain people in your life, the you believed yourself to be, the ways that you existed that will no longer be feasible for this new version of yourself. So when the grief comes up, I encourage you to not take it too seriously. Like, feel it for sure, honor it for sure, have like a ceremony, like a little funeral for your old self, or meditate on it, or write yourself a letter, you know, thank you for surviving, thank you for doing the things you needed to do to get by, thank you for doing the best you could with what you had, whatever. However you feel about that old version of yourself. You don't have to be like, you're dumb, like, I hate you, you suck, you ruined my life. It's just like truly everyone, for the most part, is doing the best they can with what they have. But, you know, honor that, but don't take the grief as a sign that you're doing something wrong or that you're on the wrong track. It's actually a sign that you're on the right track. It's a sign that you're paying attention to your feelings, that your intuition is working for you, and it just means that you're like being conscious with the process of expansion. And that's huge. If you were to stifle the grief and keep expanding, then that grief would be suppressed within you and it would come out in like self-sabotaging ways. You know, you will have that feeling of like, I don't deserve this, so I'm going to ruin it. That's the vibe of like when someone falls in love with someone and then they're like, I'm too scared to do this, so I'm going to ruin it before, you know, my heart can get broken. And that's a really fucked up way to be, because you're like denying yourself happiness. You're also denying someone you love happiness. And it shouldn't be scary to love. Love is the most natural, beautiful thing in the world. It's like dying, loving, expanding. These are all natural processes that your body knows how to do. You just have to let them. You just have to surrender to the process and like unpack, be curious about the feelings that come up around the change, the expansion, the surrender. And then, you know, with the discomfort and frustration and then the grief, it starts to become desire. It starts to become like realizing the things that need to change, and starting to be willing to undergo the changes. There starts to be less fear and more motivation, more surrender, more even excitement. I remember when I was first kind of figuring out my queerness, and talk about not a lightning bolt, but like a long, drawn out unfolding. It's like I had my first queer experience when I was like 10 or 11 and only had queer experiences until I was, well, then it stopped, and then I had no like experiences until I was 15, and then, you know, by then it was like the hetero brainwashing had already taken place. And but I still had, you know, like I used to flirt with butches whenever I was around one. I had like all these crushes on girls. I just didn't think of it that way. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s and in a long-term relationship that was like supposed to be the one that would like be the person you marry. You know, it's like my college sweetheart, the first person I lived with, and it just felt like it was my first grown-up relationship, and everyone feels like that's the one, like that's the one you stick with. And so when I was like discovering my queerness, or just admitting to it, you know, because I was like reading all these other experiences and reading a lot about feminism and exposed to these like queer films, and you know, sort of realizing that when I would see things like Chasing Amy and it would hit me so hard, like there was a reason for it. And I was just sort of like admitting to things that I had suppressed or been in denial about. And then there was all this fear, you know, like, what does this mean for my relationship? What does this mean for my identity? Like, I've already struggled with, because people could tell that I was queer without me knowing. And I had already struggled with like boyfriends being insecure about like the ways that I was attracted to women, or the ways women were attracted to me, or like my sexuality in general, or you know, I was just always treated as like someone not to be trusted, and like maybe I deserved that at points, because I did often struggle with monogamy, but not in the way that like I didn't ever cheat on anyone, but I would often like have crushes. And sometimes I would like break up with someone to pursue something with someone else, but I would be really honest about it. And for some reason that has like made people think of me as a terrible person, instead of being like, no, it's worse to like lie and hide. And like, you know, I feel like it shows more integrity and strength of character to be like, hey, I'm having feelings for this other person, instead of being like denying it like all my boyfriends did and like driving me crazy about it, not admitting it. You know what I mean? It's like, why is lying considered better? It's like the truth teller always gets shot. Like, shoot the messenger. It's like, shoot the truth teller. Whoever's telling the truth is the one that gets the most shit. And I guess, you know, whatever, that's like other people's issues, but eventually it was like the desire to experience queerness became greater than my fear of the change. And that's when you know you're kind of like actually ready for the expansion. It's like that moment when, you know, I'm getting fucked, and my body starts to be like, oh, you know, like starts to be like, yes, give me. and you know, up until that, it's like I might not be totally sure that it's gonna happen, but then there's this moment where it's like, okay, I'm ready, I'm down, let's do this. And it's always worth it. To talk about some tarot cards that remind me of expansion. First of all, number one, the Tower. The Tower card, it may not feel like expansion. It might feel just like destruction. But in order to expand, there does have to be, at mildest, like a dismantling, you know, because expansions, forks in the road, these like moments of growth, these like growth spurts, these cycles, you know, there is always something old that has to be let go of in order to call the new in. It's like we only have so much room in our energy. And sometimes ways of being are so contradictory that it's not possible to hold both at the same time. It's like in that relationship where it was like, you know, I tried really hard to be like, we can be together, we can be non-monogamous, I can experience this thing that, like, I feel like if I were to die tomorrow, never having had a queer experience, like, I would be filled with regret and sadness. So, like, this is something I just have to do. But one doesn't mean that I have to sacrifice the other, right? It was sort of my, like, mentality. But what I discovered is that it's not just the act of, like, the sexual romantic act of queerness that I was needing. It was also like the lifestyle, the philosophy, the freedom, the community. Like there was so much more involved in it than I realized. And as I embraced that and spent more time in that energy, I realized that there was no space for that in this relationship. And actually that there was a lot of misogyny in that relationship that I wasn't experiencing with my queer community. And it became impossible to hold space for both. So don't be afraid of the Tower moments. Don't be afraid of the discomfort, the grief, and the dismantling as you make room for the expansion. It's like part of the process. It's a necessary evil. It's not even evil, but you know what I mean. It's just like sometimes you have to do hard things to get to the good, sweet stuff. And the Tower moments don't have to be so dramatic or traumatic. They can be really fluid and easy, just like death, you know, like it's just something your body does. And it's just like the way our cells regenerate or the way wounds heal. It's like this is something your body, your spirit, your energy knows how to do. You just have to work those surrender muscles. It reminds me of like an orgasm, you know, for a long time, I think because of trauma and because of how like young men were, maybe still are, I'm not sure, but like not speaking from experience there, but like when I was young men were just not very patient with pleasure. They didn't really understand what to do with like a vagina, and I also had a lot of like issues, and so this thing would happen where it'd be really, really hard for me to come, like really hard, and sometimes it would take like 45 minutes and they would be bored and like annoyed, and then I would feel frustrated and resentful because it'd be like, you don't care about my pleasure. Also, like, why can I do this in 3 seconds by myself and it takes you 45 fucking minutes, you know? There was just a lot to unpack. But this thing would happen where like I would get really, really close, and then at the last second everything would tense up and it would like go away, and that would just keep happening over and over again. And that would sometimes happen by myself too. And I think it was like trauma, or like a fear of my own pleasure, or like just not knowing how to relax into it. It's like I was so worked up about like achieving it that I was putting too much pressure on it, and I wasn't enjoying the unfolding. I wasn't riding the waves of the process. And that's what that reminds me of. Like, the surrender is part of it. The process is part of it. Like, you can feel good from the start all the way up to the orgasm, and even after. And then you can bring another and another and another. And before you know it, you're getting fisted, and you got to change the sheets to go to sleep. So, the tower can be really beautiful, really transformative, and it can be, and often is, like exactly what you need at the right time. It's just hard to see that in the moment. It's much easier to see it in retrospect. Another card that represents expansion to me is like the Seven of Cups. The Seven of Cups can be about like indecision. It can be about like having so many options that you don't know which ones to choose. But to me, it kind of represents like overabundance, like an overabundance of choices, and it reminds me of like, you have the tower moment and then there's nothing, it's just like blank space, and you get to be like, okay, now I get to choose. Do I want a little dragon? Do I want some jewels? Do I want love? Like, what do I want? This is the beauty of queerness too. This is the beauty of queer as in fuck you, right? Like, you get to choose. There is a lot of fear wrapped up in the unknown. I was just writing my Substack that's going to go out tomorrow. I'm recording this on Tuesday, June 10th. It's going to come out on June 11th, and this episode is going to come out on the 15th. But I was talking about how like I Googled today like who was the first leftist, and I found this hilarious article by this Christian guy who was like, Lucifer was the first leftist, and how like leftists just don't like to live by rules. They just like don't like rules. They like anarchy, and like they want to overthrow the government. It's like, well, yeah, but but we do like, rigidity does fear like expansiveness. And one of my favorite things, probably my favorite thing about queerness, is the expansiveness, is the like uncharted territory of it all. It's like, there is no template. You don't have to bring heteronormativity into it. You don't have to bring the gender binary into it. You don't have to bring hierarchies into it. You don't have to bring monogamy into it if you don't choose to. I currently am choosing it because of like simplicity and time, and also just like, it's just a lot of work to like manage a lot of different people's emotions, but that's besides the point. But it is a choice, you know what I mean? And you get to decide like what your life looks like, what your relationships look like. And that can be a fluid thing. It doesn't have to always be the way it is. It's like my partner and I right now are sort of reconsidering some of our parameters and seeing where there's flexibility and where there's not. Because I started asking myself, like, do I need more flexibility? Do I need more expansiveness? Do I... and this has been the case in our relationship from the very start. It's like things have actually constantly been changing and evolving as we like honor our individuals within our union. And so we've always been changing things up, and there's sometimes more resistance than others. And like sometimes certain concepts or areas or decisions are more challenging or have more baggage than others. But like, we do a good job of just kind of like flowing with it. So it's like how it is today might not be how it always is, and probably won't be how it always is, but we're deciding. Like we talk to each other, we choose, we like decide what we want, we bring it to the table, we discuss it, we like try to figure it out, you know what I mean? And like, that's what I love about it. I love that there's no like, this is what you're supposed to do, this is how you do it, this, the man takes the trash out, the woman cleans the house, and if someone has to give up their career, it's the woman, and like, all those rules. And the expansiveness feels so good, but I also think that's what scares people about it. I think that's what scares people into like not being out, or like not being a practicing, like not being someone who's practicing queerness as in like the lifestyle. And you can be queer and not practicing like queerness as a verb. And not, and I don't mean that in like terms of sexual experience. I mean that in terms of like, you can have all straight friends, you can have like a hetero appearing relationship, you can have all the benefits of that privilege, and you cannot be part of a queer community, you cannot practice queer politics, you cannot have to think about all of this, you know, not think about the expansion of it all, not decide for yourself. You can just like fall in line and do that, and you're still queer, obviously, but it's like a different relationship to queerness than someone who's like queer as a verb, as a lifestyle, as a philosophy. And I think sometimes why people say things like, as a woman being with men is easier, that's what they mean, is like there's a lot of privilege and a lot of safety in that, and also there's not as much demand for emotional intimacy, and there's a template, and sometimes people really do need someone to tell them how to do things. I'm not one of those types of people. I like to figure it out for myself. I like to define it for myself, and anytime I try to shove myself into something traditional or something because you're supposed to do it, I suffer greatly. Another one is the fool. You know, I love depictions of the fool where it's like chest open, heart open, you know, totally open body language, and he's walking towards that cliff, and you know he's just like walking off of it like Wile E. Coyote or Daffy Duck. And or like a better example would be like Bugs Bunny. You know how like Bugs Bunny does it and he's fine because he doesn't look down, but then when like Daffy Duck or Wile E. Coyote does it, like as soon as they look down, they fall. But it's like going into the unknown with joy, with pleasure, with excitement, with openness. And instead of with fear and trepidation or anxiety or like, or barely going into it at all, you know, like just being like, I'll just dip a toe off this cliff and see if that's enough for me. It's just like going whole hog and being like, let's fucking do this thing. And I love the full energy for that. It reminds me that like every beginning is exciting, and like every time, you know, the tower moment comes, afterwards comes the full, or I guess like the real end is the world. But you know what I mean? It's like the cycle ends and then it begins, and then you're tasked once again with leaping off of the cliff, whatever that means for you, whether it's like a new job or a new relationship or a new way of being, or like whatever it is. It can be the most mundane thing of like, I'm gonna try a new recipe tonight, to like the most heavy thing of like, I want to change my entire life, because none of it is serving me right now. Another card that reminds me of this is the Magician, which is that like you have everything you need to make this happen. Your body knows how to do this, and also you are the master of yourself. You know, like you're in charge of yourself. You're the keeper of the thoughts that you think. You're the runner of the programs. You can choose to engage with your default settings, or you can choose to kind of like upgrade the operating system if you find that there's bugs or limitations, or you just want to like expand. And the Magician is about like balance. It's like all four elements are present. It's about knowing you're a manifester, trusting in your power, trusting in your ability to like go after and get what you want. And it's also about not just knowing what you want and like, and sort of knowing how to get it. Like it's not only mental or not only emotional. It's also like hitting the ground, running, and taking the action that will help those manifestations unfold. It's like a fully realized energy. Also the Three of Wands, which is like, you know, standing on the cliffs of your like empire, because it represents Alexander the Great. And you know, he's like conquered the world, and here he is looking at his empire, and he like weeps because there's nothing else to conquer, which is like, ugh, okay, colonizer. But Anyway, it's about sort of like waiting for your ships to come in. So it's, maybe you've made the choice to expand. Maybe you've started putting some things into practice, but you're not seeing like the return yet. You're not seeing the benefits. You're not seeing the like external payoff of the changes you've been making internally. And I think that's part of the process too, because when you're in that energy, and this is at myself, when you're in that energy of like, okay, I've done the work, I've made the changes, I did the tower, I dismantled everything, I like rebuilt it based on what I actually want, like I'm designing this, I'm in the driver's seat, I'm doing the 7 of Cups, I'm choosing, I'm like putting into place, I'm laying the foundations, like I'm doing it. So like, where is the payoff? Where is the reward that tells me I'm on the right track, or that like, where's the benefit? It's been only hard. It's been only sad. It's been only challenging, and it's required a lot of discipline and like commitment on my part. And where is the payoff? And those moments are actually really important, because I always experience a purge when I'm in that energy. I always experience, it goes right back to discomfort and frustration, grief over the old, the desire for the change. I'm just like, I'll just get to this like ruminating, like frustrated, resentful place. I start like yelling at God in my journal and being like, is this ever going to happen for me? Am I ever going to make it happen? Am I ever going to see like the results of my hard work? And that's when, eventually it's good to kind of like purge, feel those feelings, get it out of your body, because it's not good to hold it in. And then take a deep breath and like actually take stock, take that bird's eye view and be like, is there anything I've manifested? Is what has changed? What is working for me? Are there any signs that I'm missing because I'm a little bit in ingratitude, or I'm a little impatient because the waiting is hard? And that's important, because that's just you with the dustpan, like getting the crumbs, you're just like, those wounds are coming back up to be looked at again. And it's nothing more than that. It's not a testament to like your growth or your character or anything that you feel those feelings. It's like normal to feel them and good to feel them, because you got to get them out. You're not meant to take them with you the size they are. They're supposed to be smaller and lighter, and you're just doing that work too. So like, even think of that as part of the process, part of the expansion. And then we have the 6 of Wands, which is like victory. It's where you finally see that it all pays off, and you're in that place where you can look back and you can be like, actually, I'm so grateful for every single moment. I'm so grateful for every single choice. I'm so grateful for those endings, for those failures, for those setbacks, for those frustrations, because here I am and I can't imagine my life any other way. And that's the beauty of expansion. Eventually what was outside of your comfort zone becomes really comfortable. And do you know what happens next? Then it starts to be time to expand again. And there's nothing wrong with that. And, there is something wrong with that in the example of like unchecked consumerism, or like consumption, or the way we treat this planet, the way we try to deplete each other, the way work depletes us and wants to just like take everything you've got and then be like, wait, we need more. But in the sense that's like, I've said this before on this podcast, but like, since the moment you were conceived, you have been in a state of transition. You have been growing and changing. Like I said, your cells regenerate constantly all the time. And like, our bodies are always growing and changing. I think that's why like the fight against aging feels really futile and kind of silly and shallow. No shade to anyone who like engages with it, because obviously there's a lot of pressure to engage with it, and I feel it too, and I've considered it, like things like Botox and stuff. Not that I could afford it, but if I could, I would consider it, you know what I mean? But I always come back to like, but it is ultimately futile, because it's like your body's doing it regardless. Like you can't actually fight aging. You can fight like the physical signs of aging. You can look younger, but when you look at someone who's like 40, whether they've had like facelifts and Botox and fillers or not, you can tell they're 40. Like it's just the energy. That's how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be in a constant state of change. So like, as soon as you start to get comfortable, as soon as you start to be like, okay, I've done it, I've achieved my goal, it's like soon, the tweaks and the things that you would change, like the smoothing starts, the editing starts, right? And then you start to be like, oh, actually, this could be a little better. Actually, this could be a little better. And hopefully with practice, like it does get easier and the changes are like smaller instead of huge. But we're always going to be challenged in our lives. We're always going to be met with things that are scary or hard or not what we desire, like not ideal. And if you can think of it as like, how is this pushing me to expand? How is this pushing me to expand like my heart, my capacity to love, my capacity to be soft, my capacity to feel my feelings? How is this pushing me to let more people in? How is this pushing me to like connect even more deeply to my integrity? How is this pushing me to be more aligned with my higher self? How is this pushing me to expand, to let my soul shine through even brighter? And most things are trying to do that. Like that is the purpose of most things we go through, even if they really fucking suck. It's like you can always trust yourself to allow something to transform you in a way that is beautiful instead of a way that is like only destructive or only hard. So in conclusion, what do we do when we're faced with expansion? The best thing to do is work on surrender. And if you can't surrender at the moment because you feel all these feelings of like, well, I have to do this, 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 and this, and I'm not ready for all that. And like, I feel resentful that a change is coming. I feel resentful that I'm being asked to expand. I don't want to expand. I want to stay small. I'm safer here. Whatever it is, the feelings that come up, feel them. But ultimately, when the time comes to surrender, do. Just like with fisting, while there is, if not pain, discomfort, but like usually a little bit of both, there's also pleasure too. And like the pleasure kicks ass. I hope this resonated with you. I hope it wasn't too risque, but also if it was, that's none of my business. Love me or keep scrolling. I don't really care. Just remember that you are allowed to be happy. You're allowed to chase your happiness. You're allowed to grow. You're allowed to outgrow. You're allowed to become. That's what you came here to do. And it's okay to honor that process within yourself. It's okay to let things go that stand in the way of that process. And all of it's okay. The grief is okay. The fear is okay. The frustration is okay. The resistance is okay. The shame is okay. The falling apart is okay. The undoing is okay. The unlearning is okay. And the pleasure is okay. The happiness is okay. The love is okay. The authenticity and vulnerability is okay. Like it's all amazing. It's all beautiful. It's all part of the process. It's all part of a holistic life. And let me know in the comments about a time that you experienced expansion, or tell me your favorite fisting story. I'd love to hear both. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. Send this to someone who you think would enjoy it. Send it to your local fisting slut. And that would really help me a lot. That would help me expand. That would help this show grow. And that would help me experience some of that Three of Wands energy where like my ship, can I get a ship? Can I get one ship? Even a flag. Give me a flag on a little rowboat. Like give me something. Daddy needs to see some growth. Thank you once again. And I'll talk to you next time. The Walk On Podcast is a production of Walk On Productions. It is written, recorded, produced, edited, and marketed by me. That's right, all by my lonesome. This is truly an independent production and a labor of love, so every little bit of support counts. You can support me by liking, commenting, or sharing this episode. You can follow me on social media. The podcast content is at walkon_pod. And my personal account with my music, my dancing, my writing, and everything else is Britt_that's_it. You can book a service with me. I offer tarot readings, astrology consultations, a mentorship service where we meet once a week and discuss your blocks to abundance, to love, to self-acceptance. I also offer voice lessons, which can be just learning how to sing. It can also be throat chakra healing that teaches you how to lay boundaries and speak your truth. Or it can be gender-affirming voice lessons. You can book all of those at my website, which is brittcannon.me/services. You can explore the other pages on my website to listen to my music. I have a few singles out. I have an EP I released. You can go watch my burlesque performances. You can also buy my book of poetry, Flight of the Final Girl, which explores my generational trauma through the lens of horror movies I love. You can book me for your event to perform, to do tarot readings, to whatever you want me to do for money at the email britt@brittcannon.me. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. Happy healing. Bye.